Alright, it's the end of the 9:20 AM turn, and still just a lot of movement taking place. We do have the first casualty of the battle out here on the left. This artillery managed to eliminate just one of the weak Spanish cavalry units on the far left across the river. Otherwise, the French just moving up. You can see here they're really shifting out to the left. Most of Gerard's 5th Corps, French artillery, and Routy, General Routy moving up as well on the left-hand side. I had considered putting them on the right here just to harass the British across the river, but we're really going to try and focus in strength on that left-hand flank against the Spanish. Godinot's men have advanced to the Rio Albuera. They've sent out the Guerre out in front to again harass the French. And again, this is just designed to hold the British. Having said that, the British are responding. They've moved up alongside the river. The Portuguese also activated, and there is a concern, I guess, here that the British and the Portuguese could cross the river. This is why we still have, I think this is World's Brigade, down here, just in case. I did have also Vares Brigade over on the right here, but they're part of Gerard's 5th Corps, and so I'm going to shift them out to the left here to rejoin with the Corps, and I think they'd be of more value with Gerard under a corps activation than just sitting out on the right, potentially being inactive for too long. And as I said, so the British have activated, more of them have approached the river here, and then the Portuguese activated as well, using some of Beresford's aides de camp to assist with that. And again, just moving up to the Rio Albuera without doing too much. Alright, so that's the end of the 9:20 AM turn. Alright folks, the end of another turn, the 9:40 AM turn, and just more movement around the board. The French shifting again their forces pretty strongly out there on the left. Now the Spanish in response have withdrawn their cavalry. It was, as I said, they lost one unit to artillery in the last turn, and they just didn't want to risk any more. It's not worth it, so they've pulled back to the right-hand side, which is the western side of that Spanish line along there. A bit of a traffic jam, a lot of French trying to move through this area. There was a light cavalry activation out on the left, which pushed up. But what we decided to do, as you can see here, we started to get Gerard's corps to... We're going to try and not push too far to the left, but cross there's two fords here. One on the left, one on the right, and make that the focus of our crossing. Now on the right you can see the British and the Portuguese have moved up to the line. French have begun to advance to the Rio Albuera, and again you can see this is Vares, men of the 5th Corps shifting out to the left. Remember I said the plan was for these guys to link up with Gerard to enable that large corps activation. I'm thinking they may hang around this area here and just threaten these Spanish out here on the far left. So a relatively quiet turn, just some more manoeuvring, and the French deciding where they'll advance. That's now the end of the 9:40 AM turn, which brings us to 10 AM. Alright, here we are at the end of the 10 o'clock turn, and the battle is just about to start. The French have now, Gerard's corps on the left here, have moved around and begun to threaten those Spanish positions. The Spanish cavalry activated, both of these units activated. These on the right here initially pulled back. They're just going to guard, protect that Spanish right flank. But these folks here under Loy, they decided to threaten this French advance, moved against these French units. They quickly formed square, and the cavalry halted. But they're just keeping a check on that French advance, letting them know that they're there, which will force the Spanish to bring up their cavalry, force the French to bring up their cavalry on their left flank. As you can see, most of the French deploying in this area, they're beginning to sort of file out in formation. They've crossed that arroyo. The artillery is still a long way behind. Again, made the mistake of bringing them up in the rear. We might, the French might sort of deploy, prepare their assault, and then wait for the artillery to set up before they begin to do anything. Over to the right, you can see there the French under, this is got in those men over here on the far right, and I think this is, they were activated. This is Whirlay. Yep, they've been activated. And they're just sort of again moving to this space. Actually, begin to move through the scrub here in the centre, just to where the sort of Rio Albuera splits in this area here. It's also the sort of nexus between the British and the Spanish. The British are beginning to move around here, but this brigade in the world is try and cross this river and test these British defences. Elsewhere, the British 4th Division is still moving on in the background. They're going to move behind Albuera and I guess occupy this position now, and perhaps also be in a position to support the Spanish. I don't know how the Spanish are going to go in combat, so I want to have that 4th Division under Cole close at hand, just in case the Spanish can't hold out against the French. They have a few there's special rules relating to these units. A few pretty weak units, units with low morale, and I just don't know how they'll stand against the power of these French assaults. French artillery also will outnumber the Spanish, so if I can get them into action and correct my earlier error, they could also have a big impact out here in the southwest of Battlefield. Okay, so that's the end of the 10 o'clock turn. I'll report back more shortly.